Potato? That's the answer to my daily vibe question for my workmates? I mean, I couldn't believe that it came out of my mouth. I had asked everybody for an icebreaker, what is your favorite type of food? Or what is your favorite restaurant to eat in? And when I thought of it, all I could think of was potato and rice and broccoli. I couldn't even think of what my favorite food was. Everyone else had all their different types of food, but yet I couldn't. I was 50 years of age and I couldn't name my favorite type of restaurant or food. And it's because I had not thought about it before. And then I asked other questions like, what's your favorite color? And I thought, well, I guess blue. That's what men say, right? Boys always like blue. I didn't know. What's your favorite hobby? I didn't know again. I realized that at 50 years of age, I had no clue about what these things were for me. I had kind of lost my sense of identity over a long period of time. And the realization hit me right then and there. Who am I? What is it that I like? What do I enjoy in life? And I want to ask you, who are you? Like, really, who are you? Or are you just an extension of everyone else around you? Today, we're exposing the character, the fake self, the fake you that you built to survive, to cope. And we're going to find how showing you how to find the real you may be the very first time that you start to acknowledge what you actually really like and what you are as an identified person, your differentiation to everybody else. What's interesting, Gail, is that I watched something online just this week with that actor Rob Lowe. And he was telling the interviewee Simon Sinek on his show the secrets of actors when they walk the red carpet. And it was quite funny. He was teaching everyone that to pose, the ladies, they don't say cheese, of course, because that would open your mouth. They say prune. And that supposedly lifts your cheekbones and it gives you a pout. And then he let out other secrets that sometimes they call it man of the people, where they come and take photos with the people and they interact with the people. And they had another one called, what was it, Blue Steel, when they pose with their watch. And there's iconic poses. And they have all these catchphrases for these poses. And he admits that it's just a ruse. It's a game. They take it seriously, but it's just a game. Actors play games and they play roles for a living. So we thought that today we'll be looking into this issue, this reality that goes on in everybody's lives where we kind of have a mask on and we're asking the question, are you living as a character? Are you playing a role? Are you wearing a mask? Are you hiding your true self? Welcome to the I'm at a Mindset with Gail and James. This one's going to be a good one, also a fun one because we just want to keep it real and fun. We're talking about self-worth and how your self-worth is not defined by the world around you, but it's the truth of who you are intrinsically. Each week, we explore real conversations, practical tools, mindset strategies to help you discover your true identity, to build confidence, to live life to the full, knowing that you truly do matter. So let's dive in today. Gail, I'd like to welcome you to the program, and I want to pose to you the opening question. Where does this role playing, this character, this other self, this fake me come from? Where did I get it? Why do I have it?
Well, in the last episode, we talked about emotionally immature parenting and growing up with an emotionally immature parent. You develop survival mechanisms and traits that you default to.
So, immature parents, what does that mean, immature parents?
Those are parents that are not regulated in their emotions. They can't express their emotions in a way that is age appropriate, not their anger, their happiness, or whatever. And they, in turn, heap that onto you as the child, and the child is not able to regulate their emotions either.
Yeah, we're looking at last time when you're an infant, even when you're a baby, you look to your parents for some sort of a security, for some sort of nurture,
Validation.
validation. You look to the parents to see whether they're in tune with how you're feeling. And we talked about this immature parents. We have kids when we're very young, and sometimes we don't provide that for our kids for a variety of reasons. And a child will grow up with deficiencies. We
Right.
talked about a void, a hole, something that was not met emotionally because of that immaturity very early on. We talked about in the womb, we talked about in infancy, and even in those first 7 years, very formative when the child needs to have that and they don't get it. So there's a variety of things that happen. We talked about the outcomes for a child and how we can relate to some of that, but also there are coping mechanisms, as you've said,
Right.
many types of coping mechanisms. And one of those coping mechanisms is that we end up playing this role, this character, this fake self in childhood
Right.
as a way to survive, to cope. Because if the parent's not going to give me love this way, then I'm going to pretend to be this way or this type of person to try to elicit some response, try to elicit
Or
some affection.
or you hide your emotions because it's not received well. If you are crying and your parent, shut up, go to your room. What's
Yeah.
wrong with you? Don't be a sissy. Or if you're happy and you're so excited to tell your parent about something and they just dismiss you.
Yes.
Why are you going to share?
Yes.
So you internalize a lot. So whatever happens to you as a child, you a lot of times will internalize. So it's not what happens to you, it's how you receive what happens to you inside. And that hurts your self-worth.
That's a big one. Can you say that again? That's an important thing to say.
It's not what happens to you as a child, it's how you receive what happens to you, how you internalize
Yes. It's what happens
inside
inside
of
of
you.
you,
Mhm.
not just something external.
Exactly.
And the child, you talked about being invisible and you talked about shyness last time.
Yes.
And that can become a role. You stay invisible, you stay in the shadows. That is a role. So it's not just a momentary reaction, it starts to become the way that you have to act as a result of that.
Right.
So a child somehow, I guess that inner resiliency of a child starts to find a workaround. If my mom is not paying me attention this way, then I'm going to act this way. And maybe then she will acknowledge me, or maybe then I can please her, or maybe then she'll not ignore me. Or my dad, maybe I need to behave this way, or achieve this, or achieve that. Then he will love me. Then he will validate me. So it's not just about the reaction of the child in a moment. It's this role playing that just becomes a default for that
Right,
child.
right. Survival.
Yes, yes. So it comes from immature parenting. It's a survival mechanism. It's a way we cope. Children develop these roles: invisible, pleaser, a fixer, a joker. These are many roles we're going to
Mhm.
explore in this episode, and that's the way we navigate that lack of nurture.
Right.
And so I wanted to ask you, Gail, how about for you? Can you see some roles that you started playing? We're going to call it the character. Did you start playing different characters, like the actors playing a character? Did you play some characters when you were little?
I believe that I grew up quicker than I should have or needed to. I had to take care of my sisters. So I developed a mothering type role
Mm-hmm.
and did cleaning and cooking and babysitting, which, it wasn't a paid babysitting job. It was, I had to watch my sisters and I did various things. I remember having to go to the neighbor's house and hem my daddy's jeans for work.
You also
And
left home early and had to start working too. You had
I
many
did.
jobs.
Right, right. So I started working at 15
Wow.
and then I left home at 16. By the time I was 18, I think I had 4 jobs at one
Wow.
time.
So that's like the provider in a
Right,
way,
right.
and having to be independent. Yeah, I can relate to some of those, but in a slightly different way. For me as a child, I also had to develop that nurturing role. I had to look after my younger brothers, like a parental role.
Mhm.
And that meant get them up in the mornings, get us on the bus. I remember one experience which kind of exemplifies this role that I was playing as this pseudo dad. We had a solar eclipse. I don't know if you know what a solar eclipse is, when the moon passes in front of the sun and everything goes dark. And I heard on the news that if you look at a solar eclipse, you go blind, and you don't want to point at it either because I think you get boils or something, some stuff that came on the news. And so I was so worried, not about me, about my younger brothers, that before they got up to go to school, I covered all the windows with blankets because I didn't want my brothers to look at the sun directly during the solar eclipse. And I think I might have even had them stay home. I didn't want them to go to school that day. So I made these decisions out of fear as I parented my brothers to protect them from going blind from looking at a solar eclipse. It's funny now, but my brothers will attest to it. I mean, they're in their mid to late 40s now. Me playing that parental role because I guess there was that lack of nurture in a way.
Right.
And we talked about how it's sometimes for valid reasons, parents having to work, other times because that was just missing. I also became a people pleaser. That's kind of like a role, a people pleasing role, where I was, yes, if I was asked to do this, yes. And I also became very perfectionistic as a kid and very hard on myself. And my parents didn't actually push perfectionism on me. I developed that myself.
Right.
So whenever I didn't sing well, I would beat myself up. Whenever I didn't perform well, I would blame myself. My parents were not hard taskmasters, but I was just blaming myself. Can you
Right.
relate to
Yes,
those
I was
things?
definitely a perfectionist
Yes.
in everything that I did. And I never felt like it was good enough for me or for anyone else. Not that they were saying, do this perfectly
Yes.
or anything, but I was my own worst critic.
Yes.
And there
So,
wasn't a lot of support.
so your parents may not have been criticizing you directly, but
Right.
you developed that persona.
Well, I think I had this idea everything was toxic. And if I did better, if I was a better child,
Yes.
then things at home would be better.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very indirect, but that is a role that we play. I also developed joking, like humor, almost like with my brothers, we would put each other down, like this kind of coping mechanism with humor, like
Mhm.
deprecating humor, calling each other names. We all did it, and we look back now as adults. It's kind of crazy. I mean, we would play sport together, but we would be putting each other down, especially my middle brother. We would put him down and call him names, and yet we were emotionally close. It was
Right.
just a way that we were kind of coping with
Right.
with the situation. It's like a role that we played. Lastly, I wanted to mention that I was very self-sacrificial in a way where I put myself last. I was more worried about, say my mom's emotions or my brothers or other people from church. I remember once my cousin Jason came to stay over and I would give him the bed and I'll sleep on the floor. Or if someone wanted food and there was only a little bit left, I'll give that to someone else and
Mhm.
putting myself last. Sounds altruistic and positive, but I think it also had some of that role playing.
Yeah.
So all these things as a child are not just character traits that just came from nowhere. They are these coping mechanisms, these survival roles that we play, the character role.
Mhm.
But we want to tell you that if you can relate to some of that as well, we want to just assure you that you didn't invent that character from nowhere. It was often your only option to survive.
Right.
So we may not differentiate it because it was me playing that role, but really it was your way to survive a situation. The child does what it can do to get that nurture, that attention, that love that it yearns for. You didn't invent it. It was actually a strength. You used that to get through and get what you needed in that
Exactly.
time. So we talked last time that, this all comes from immature parenting. We kind of went to great lengths there. I promised that this time we would talk about adult role playing, the impact, parenting. how it plays out.
Right.
And I want to pose the question, why does this persist into adulthood? I mean, surely, like we said last time, we mature in every other way. We develop, we go to college, sometimes we can become successful. And yet emotionally, and when it comes to role playing, these things persist into adulthood. It's almost like they're a default program that just doesn't go away. It's a way that we continue to manage unmet needs from our childhood.
Right.
We learn it and we go, okay, so if this worked to get the love and attention I needed from my parents, then it's going to work at school to get that same love and attention. So little James became the class clown at school to elicit a response from the other kids, especially the girls. That became my way to not be unseen at school and to kind of get this pseudo love from others and attention. Yeah, that nurturing um, spirit that I had as a child, that role that I played, developed into being a very caring person, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me to become a church pastor and to have a strength in ministry in looking after those who were suffering. One of my strengths and my passions was to visit those in the hospital, walk with those through bereavement and sickness and even and death, to be there for other people. And I would actually do it without any boundaries. I would go, and some of you would know this, if I was called to the bedside of someone dying, I would stay through the night. I would even let the family take a nap while I stayed by the bedside day and night. Other chaplains would come and go, but there I was, motivated by a love for people. And I believe that Jesus loved people, and it was a good motivation. But at the same time, this was a role, a hat that I put on very early in life.
Right.
I know we were talking earlier, you also started continuing with some of these roles into adulthood and parenting. Can you share some of those things?
Right. So I did that in my marriage. I did it as a parent. I think that I saw my parents' marriage fail, and so I felt like, well, I've got to do better than they did. I've got to have the perfect life. So, of course, I was a perfectionist,
Mm-hmm.
but I was also overprotective because I didn't feel like my parents were very protective where I was concerned. And so, in my desire to be the perfect parent, I
Mm-hmm.
think I became very legalistic. That is a churchy term,
Yes.
but I think I went more extreme than I needed to. I also did not have any boundaries. I've always struggled with boundaries in everything that I do. That is not healthy.
That's so interesting seeing more than one role come together. So you've got your perfectionistic role, wanting to do everything perfectly, and you're throwing yourself into everything, including
Mm-hmm.
work and all of that. You've also got this nurturing caregiver type role where you're probably, by your own admission, maybe overprotective in some ways or too strict, you
Right,
said.
right,
And so you got these roles all kind of shaping
right,
the way you parented and the
right.
way you did family life and even church.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So you applied that perfectionistic role to church, and you were telling me also to other aspects of yourself as well, like always wanting to have that perfection. What other areas were you trying to achieve
Uh,
perfection in?
well, with my looks, I never felt good enough.
Hmm.
I had been teased
Yes.
at school. I'd been teased by family members. And so I never felt like I looked good enough.
Yes.
That was never up to par. I also was house proud. Our house was never, clean enough for,
When you were a child,
yeah, when I was a child.
or at least
And
that's how you perceived it.
that's how I perceived
Yeah.
it. And so when I grew up, I became very house proud and did not want anyone to come over. And if they did, I wanted to know before they got there, and everything had to be just perfect because I was so afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
I had been judged my whole life. So, of course, in adulthood, I'm going to feel
Yeah.
judged and on a grander scale,
Yeah. That's crazy.
because you're in a career, you're in various organizations with your kids and everything. So it followed me in every area of my life.
Can you hear what she's saying? I mean, I can relate to it too. It's so crazy that, all of those things that your family would have witnessed that might have been idiosyncrasies is the term that I use. Why is mom being like this? Why is she working so many hours? Why is she, so house proud? Why can't we invite more friends over? All of that. Who would have thought decades later that that was all coming back to the roles you played to cope at home? They dictated a lot of your
Right.
decisions as an adult.
Exactly.
I mean, even decisions on relationships, we base it on these roles. So can you imagine we're playing a role and we make decisions based on those roles for lifetime relationships. And we make decisions on roles for careers sometimes, where you hear that classic, he just wanted to live up to his father's expectations. And
Right.
that's why he made that career choice. In some cultures, they pursue certain careers because in the back of their minds, I want to make daddy proud or I
Right.
want to make mom proud. Can you imagine that a lot of these things that we don't pinpoint, they're so subtle. They look like, no, that's just Gail.
Right.
That's just her quirk. No, it's not her quirk. You did not intend for those things to happen. You did not make this character up. These things are very real to you.
Right.
They're very deep in who you are. And, I developed a very destructive one from that childhood role. And that was, the jokester that started with my brothers and
Right.
teasing. And then at school, eventually I learned that it's not healthy to tease other people and joke about other people. So I decided at some point to turn the jokes on me. And I became very self deprecating,
Right.
where I would joke about my insecurities and get a laugh from people. And I would about my body dysmorphia. If I felt uncomfortable with the way I looked or my weight, to be precise, I would throw a joke out there. And I remember in one of my churches, I had one of the mothers come up to me after I preached the sermon, and she said, "Pastor, I mean, loved your sermon, but it really bothered me and hurt me when you were joking about your weight. And I've got children, and I don't want them to hear you tease yourself." I was taken aback. And then when we got together, you noticed that I was doing that all the time.
Hmm.
Kind of, you said I was giving other people permission by doing that?
Right. Right. When you throw darts at yourself, you're giving permission to everyone else that it's okay to make fun of you or say bad things against you. And it's not okay. It's not okay. You should never do that to yourself. And I feel like it gives permission. So if you say, "Oh, I'm so stupid for doing that," it puts in someone else's mind, "You're stupid. You shouldn't do that."
Yeah.
And it tells them it's okay. Well, if that person's talking badly about themselves, well, it's okay if I say something against them. And it's not. It's never okay.
It's a coping
It
mechanism. It's a
is.
survival mechanism,
Absolutely.
but it is very unhealthy, especially when it continues on.
Right. A lot of
Okay,
comedians do that.
comedians.
Comedians do
I
that.
mean,
Actors do that. And it is a coping mechanism. And if you hear a lot of them in interviews, they talk about horrible childhoods, horrible things that they've dealt with, and addictions and everything that they've dealt with over their entire life.
I was just thinking not only self-deprecating humor, but I think for a lot of comedians, their trauma is what fuels their comedy.
Exactly. Exactly.
And sadly, we know of comedians that have passed away tragically
By their own
early in
hands.
life.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's very likely that what we're talking about today was unregulated, and they blamed themselves, couldn't live with that trauma, and that was the outcome. And that's very sad, and that's what really compels. Gail, and it compels me to really want to help others like yourself to identify this and to get beyond it, because this is not a positive thing into adulthood. I had written down a few other things in adulthood from that early role playing. Um, Self-sacrifice, it was another one that has gone into adulthood. And ministry, sure, I was caring, like I mentioned earlier, and being there for people, and we talked about people pleasing, but the self-sacrifice where I had no boundaries in my
Right.
helping others was going to extremes in
Right.
that area. And that was, again, something from childhood. Default programs. It's
Right.
something that it's, neural pathways that just becomes a part of us. And sometimes we cannot detach from that. We think it's just us. And again, it's to manage unmet needs. And the evidence of that is, we can have fear of rejection. We can keep doing these things to perform for others so that they will approve us, to belong. Sometimes we want to act a certain way so that we fit in and belong, or so that we will have peace at all costs. These are all the things that come under this banner of the character role that we play. Most of us are like actors in a movie or actors on a stage where this character takes front and center, and our self is backstage.
Right.
Actors
So
on a
true.
stage where our character takes front and center, while our true self, waits in the shadows backstage.
And sometimes you don't even know that that's not your true self.
That's right. It seems
You
like it's
have
your true
no
self.
idea.
And that's why this is so liberating.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's crazy.
It's not your true self. It is something that you created to cope. So I want to go into a couple of things in looking at how it plays out in our lives. We talked about a lack of self-worth, where you say to yourself subconsciously, I only matter if I do this.
Right.
I only matter if I achieve this or behave this way. And the boundaries, we talked about boundaries where your feelings, like someone else's feelings, become your responsibility. Like there's
Right.
no differentiation between where they end and you start. That line gets blurred, where I take responsibility for parental feelings or trauma, and then that extends to other relationships in life, where I take things on board. You might be going through something, but suddenly it's my problem. I can't differentiate. A lack of boundaries. And also, like I said at the beginning, no clear identity to know who I am, unless I need to do something to feel needed.
Or to feel loved.
Or to feel loved.
Right.
So I don't know who I am unless I am needed or loved.
Right.
And that's pretty heavy. Who are you? Are you just an extension of everybody else? Are you playing a role, a character, a fake self, because you have that desire to feel needed and loved, for nurture, to belong, to fit in? Could that be this fake you, not the real you, this fake character that we play? And when I was younger, we used to talk about wearing masks, but this is not a criticism where we're putting on a mask intentionally. This is so more unseen.
It's survival.
It's a
Default.
survival, but it's deep down inside.
I call it autopilot.
Oh, yes.
I feel certain I was on autopilot for many, many years.
Yeah. These just
I did not realize it.
reflexive behavior.
Right.
So now, in identifying this, I just wanted to list a few things, a few characteristics that are common to the character, to this fake role that we play. And I want to see if you can relate to some of these. These are ways that they show up in adulthood, and they're already things that we've touched on. Some of them are different. So number one is the pleaser. We're calling it the pleaser. In fact, we're not the only ones calling it that, but it's the people pleaser, where you always say yes. You struggle with boundaries, as we've just said, and eventually that burns you out and you become very resentful. So the pleaser. Another one is the fixer, where you take on other people's problems. And we talked about that with our experience. You neglect your personal needs. You feel overwhelmed when things are not right in the home. You just feel personally overwhelmed when you can't fix it, and you live to fix it. Number 3 is the rebel. The rebel challenges authority. There are plenty that cope and survive by becoming the black sheep of the family, the rebel. They challenge norms. Sometimes they act out and they self-sabotage just to get attention. And this is very common. People eventually, they start acting out when young to get attention of parents. They evolve in school and they become the troublemakers. Sadly, they become identified as bad kids. And no one realizes that this was just a coping mechanism brought to school from the family home. This child only knows this way to survive and to cope, to be the bad guy or the bad girl. And then that self-sabotage later on in life can lead to crime and addictions and other greater self-sabotaging that goes on. How sad when you look at the world in which we live and the things that happen, the ugly things, and you ask yourself, could it be a result of this from childhood? Crazy. There's also the caretaker that we talked about already, over responsible as a child, then in relationships growing up. Codependency happens with the caretaker, and a lot of suppressing of personal needs, like we mentioned earlier with another category. Then there's the mediator, who is the peacemaker in the home, always smoothing over conflicts, suppressing their own emotions to deal with other people's emotions, and leaving a lot of their inner turmoil unaddressed to keep the peace at home. Spouses can often fall into this. Then there's the jokester, the joker. That was me, using humor to deflect from real issues, avoiding deep emotional connection, often self-deprecating, using comedy or humor to get attention, to get a laugh. This is what makes me important. Then there's the overachiever, which we spoke about, setting unrealistic expectations, perfectionism that leads to chronic stress and anxiety and a dissatisfaction because you can never reach the ideals that you have. And then lastly, the martyr, the one that self-sacrifices, like I shared earlier, and puts self aside endlessly without boundaries. And then eventually you feel unappreciated, resentful. No one is there to that degree. And who could be to that degree? If you're a martyr and you go to that length, who would be able to soothe you to that level? No one. And then you live with that unmet expectation, that resentment. So with those things in mind, who are you? Are you the pleaser, the fixer, the rebel? Are you the caretaker? Are you the mediator? Are you the joker? Are you the overachiever? Are you the martyr? Is this a reality for you? It is for me. And Gail certainly feels that it is for her. And if you're always worried about what other people need you to be, then when do you get to be you? If you're always playing a character to get that attention, always playing a character to get the nurture, to get the love, to get whatever you need to get, then when do you get to be the authentic, real person that God made you to be? Is that person still in the shadows, backstage, even now? Is that person busting to come out and live a true, fulfilled life from an intrinsic set of values, rather than worrying about what everyone else needs or thinks? If you answered yes, then let me just point out some really good reasons for why we need to get beyond this. I mean, you can go your whole life this way, but eventually this will get the better of you.
It catches up.
And we are here before you on this podcast because it has got the better of us. And we have been through a lot of trauma as a result. a lot of relationship issues as a result, a lot of inner turmoil, a lot of emotional dysregulation as a result. The character is truly unhealthy. It's destructive. It's harmful in every way. For me, one big thing was burnout. Because I did all of those things that I picked up in childhood, and somehow I went through, almost 5 decades doing them. Eventually, the bottom fell out of my boat, and the boat sank. The boat sank in so many ways. And as I come here before you, I have got a lot of um, trauma from that sinking boat, that sinking ship. The last 5 years have been pretty difficult for me as I came to terms with the burnout that happened in my life as a result of these.
Mm-hmm.
For example, as a pastor, when you, and I want to speak to any pastor that may be watching, when you do things to an extreme without boundaries, and you see it as altruistic, which it can be, and a good thing, because the Bible says, as we mentioned before or last video, and you don't recognize that, at least the extent that you're doing these things, and the self-neglect that happens, or the neglect to your family, to your marriage, to your children, and living out this ulterior existence, this parallel dimension of a person that you are. Eventually it will catch up with you. Other people may not realize it, and there may be a mixture there. You feel a sense of calling, you love people, yes, but if you're doing it to your own detriment, if you never live from an authentic self, if you never live the real you, and never develop your identity, if you never developed your favorite color, your favorite food, never discussed openly your favorite type of music, which for me is contemporary Christian music and worship music. But sometimes in some circles, I did not want to share that for a fear of rejection and a lack of support, because that was what I liked. But maybe these people didn't like that, or maybe what I do, people are not going to accept. And I'm not talking about bad things, just things that I enjoy doing,
Exactly.
things that are good, things that are not bad, not unbiblical, not sinful, but just things that defined who I was. There was a cognitive dissonance there, where I was just getting my cues from other people,
Right.
and trying to play a role. It doesn't sound, it's not what I didn't play a role as a pastor, but I was playing a role for acceptance, if you know what I mean.
People pleaser.
Yeah, it wasn't just people pleasing. It was just playing these roles of caregiver because I was feeling an individual need and a void.
Right.
And I guess that's the way that I formed my character. So my point is that if you don't have that genuine sense of self, eventually, pastor, you're going to reach a point of burnout. You're not taking time to invest in a hobby. I couldn't tell you what's my hobby. I mean, I like listening to music, but did I invest in a hobby? I even thought that having a hobby makes you less than as a pastor, because like pastors that have hobbies are lazy. Pastors that play golf, lazy. But now I realize that, even though that's funny to say, you do have to invest in those moments that bring you a sense of peace and joy, that bring you congruity with yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So burnout is one. Resentment, anger. I mean, can you speak of some things that you saw that were negative from these roles?
Absolutely. Anger, resentment. I was trying so hard to keep my marriage together because I didn't want to be a statistic if I gave up on it. I didn't want my children to be a statistic if I got divorced. I had every reason in the world to get divorced. And I was gaslit by my father in law and by his brother, and saying, well, what did you do? What did you do to cause him to do that? And oh, well, if there's no proof, there's no crime. So, of course, I look inside and think, okay, what is wrong with me? Why Why does this keep happening to me? Why can I not make a happy home? It's got to be my fault. Every time it's got to be my fault. So what can I do? How can I make everything better? And so I stayed way too long and ended up in a divorce anyways, 26 and a half years later.
Yeah.
It did not make it better. It probably made it miserable for my children. And all my fears were I can't control, if my kids go to his house as opposed to my house, how things are going to go over there. And are they going to be safe? And are they going to be content with who he's with? And, all these things played out in my mind. So of course I couldn't. And finally, to be perfectly honest, I spent almost 30 years on antidepressants trying to hold my life together. And it was falling apart from nearly the beginning of the marriage.
Yeah.
And once I realized it was inevitable,
Yeah.
and I prayed about it, and I felt like God was saying, it's okay to go. It's okay to give up on this. Then I came off of autopilot and I did not know what to do. And I was still on antidepressants at that time. I've only come off of antidepressants since earlier this year, so maybe 10 months ago. I was just trying to see, how do I maneuver past this? And it's not easy, but I didn't know me. There was another side to that also. I spoke of legalism. I became very legalistic. We were in church, but I felt like it was my duty as a wife to keep us in church, keep our family there and everything. But I felt like if I divorced him, even though I had every right, then he would lose his salvation. How is that my job? How is that my job? It was not my job. And I was told finally by a non denominational pastor that I went to seek counsel from. And I said, if I leave, what happens to his salvation? And he said, Gail, he can't get to heaven on your coattails.
Yeah.
You can't do anything. If y'all divorce and he never walks into church again, that is not up to you. That is not your responsibility. But I was the fixer. I was the one that was going to keep everybody happy and healthy and everything. And I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. I could not take care of everybody. I couldn't even take care of myself.
Yeah. So you notice that those were roles where you took everything on you. We talked about the gaslighting. That's when another person plays with your mind and makes you believe that it is you, but you're already blaming yourself anyway, because that's what you learned when you were younger. So you were a prime target for gaslighting and blaming yourself. And then you had to play the role of the person that provided for the family religiously in every way, and all the while neglecting your true self. And that what happens is all of what you mentioned, not only a building frustration and resentment and anger,
Absolutely.
not just you, but both spouses, to be fair.
Both, yes.
And then eventually it just bubbles over. And
then, of course, it bubbled over into my children.
Yeah.
And so they didn't have the best versions of us as parents. They didn't get the best of us. What was I sacrificing? I was sacrificing everything just to keep my family together, thinking that was the solution. It wasn't the solution. And my children paid the price. My ex-husband paid the price. I paid the price, not because of what I did necessarily, because he had childhood traumas as well. And together, it just made us toxic when we came together.
And that's the thing. We've mentioned it before. It's bad enough when one has trauma, but if both of you have trauma, and most importantly, both of you do not recognize that it's trauma,
and neither one of us did,
and it goes untreated. And then what's interesting is then we are told to go and see a marriage counselor. And a marriage counselor would likely be the second best option. The best option would be to go and see a clinical psychologist or a counselor for you individually first, to identify these issues and get beyond them yourself, so that you can at least approximate what it is to live with authenticity as a spouse. But no, then we go to counseling, and then we're throwing barbs at each other, blaming each other, pointing the finger. Of course we do, because we're both coming from a point of brokenness,
Right.
and we're both accepting role play. I mean, even the decision to get married can sometimes be based on these roles that we play. So even the very foundation can start off wrong, and it leads to a fragmented life, never feeling whole, never feeling like you're living from an authentic self. A lot of people go through midlife crisis and suddenly they disappear, or they go off with someone else, or things happen that are not congruent with that person because they've been suppressing,
Right.
and then suddenly they have this big meltdown in life. I thought of mothers that lose themselves for their family and their
Mm-hmm.
kids, and then they go through a midlife crisis. They never got to go to college. They never got to do what they wanted to do. Empty nesters, when kids leave home, suddenly there's a crisis going on.
They
Even
don't
it,
even know who they are.
exactly, because
They
that's
played
being,
that because their whole identity was that role
yes,
as mother
yeah,
and wife.
yes.
And so when the kids are gone, they have no idea.
What do I do? I didn't develop my own sense of self, my
Mm-mm.
identity. And of course, in retirement, those of you who are older don't get out of this scot-free either, because even in retirement, I've heard it millions of times, they get to retirement and then they don't know what to do with themselves.
And get really depressed.
Yeah, I saw it in my own mom. I've seen it with many church members that I've pastored over the years, where they go through depression, they go through an identity crisis because they no longer have the career anymore. So your character helped you survive, but it doesn't have to run your life anymore. You don't have to go through your whole life playing this alternate self. God has a role for you that is found in Him. It's found in your true self. He created you not to wear a mask. He created you to be you. I want to put to you that you can find your true self at any age. Even if you didn't go through that when you should have, it's never too late to find it. And life will be different as a result of that. They call it individuation. When you finally detach from the roles that you were playing from that alternate self, and you become an individual with that God-given self. So I want to give you a couple of tools as we finish. Number one, I'd like to encourage you towards awareness. Now, this whole episode has been to bring about awareness, but I want you to do something more than that. I want you to name your character role. Go ahead, even now, name it. Which role have you been playing? Which category defines the character that you've been playing? Which is the fake Hollywood actor role that you use to cope with your childhood and that has plagued you throughout your life? Name it. Name them. There may be more than one. Let's name it. Let's put it on the table and reach a point of awareness. It's the first step to getting beyond it. Then I want you to detach. I want you to practice saying no, drawing that boundary and starting small, maybe recognizing, okay, so if I'm in this situation and I don't draw a boundary, there's always going to be a loser in this. The loser is you. The loser can be your family, your children. Say you're a workaholic. Let me encourage you, even though that might seem like a boast. I'm a workaholic. I work hard. There's always a loser. There's always a loser. And eventually that loser will be you. And so let me encourage you to start drawing small boundaries, saying no. Someone asks you, hey, can you stay back to work overtime? And you know that you need to spend time with your family. You need to start saying no. It's hard, but just remember, there's always a loser when you say yes to something that breaches your boundaries. We learned the hard way. Number three, so we talked about awareness. We've talked about detachment, individuation. This is what I mentioned earlier. We need to start discovering what preferences, what values, what voice we have. I want you to start asking that very basic question that I started with. What is your favorite food? What restaurants do you like to eat in? Not your family, not your husband, not your wife. What food do you like? I mean, if it's potatoes, that's okay. But have you ever thought about it? What is your favorite color that brings you enjoyment? What hobbies would you like to do? And so just discovering that individuation, at least naming those things, and then, of course, making time guilt free to at least incorporate some of those things into your life. At first, it may seem like you're neglecting something else, but let me tell you, once you realize how important it is that you live life from an authentic point of view, you will realize that an investment in those things is an investment in your children. It's an investment in your marriage. It's an investment in your career because you are building yourself up, making yourself strong, making yourself healthy so that you can serve others well.
Exactly.
So that you can give to others. Putting the oxygen mask on yourself
first, before anyone else.
And in an airplane, they give you that instruction. Before you put that oxygen mask on your child or on someone else, put it on yourself, because if you don't, you'll be no good to anybody else.
Exactly.
That's why you need to find your individuation. And lastly, integration. That's aligning your actions, your life with your core identity. I think once you start determining this is who I am, this is what I enjoy, this is my goal in life, then you can align everything from that core identity, and it makes the world of difference. Healing isn't becoming someone new. It's becoming who you were before the world told you what role to play.
Exactly.
Let me say that again. Healing isn't becoming someone brand new, someone totally different, someone like having this crisis of identity and doing something radically different. No, it's becoming who you were before the world told you to play a role.
Or your parents.
Yeah, and by world can be your parents or even what you told
Or
yourself
friends.
you needed
Yeah.
to do to play that role. If you came to that realization and made a decision to strip away that character role, how different would your life be? Who would you be? What would your life look like? My challenge, our challenge to you is that your life will be so much better, so much more fulfilling. Your life will be so much more rewarding for you and those around you. There'll be less stress. There'll be less resentment. There'll be less anger, less toxicity. There'll be less broken relationships when you become congruent with your true self. So I want to leave you with this challenge. And Gail, rhetorically for you as well, and for me, I want us to do this. When we're put in a situation where we have to make a choice, I want you to ask yourself, does this choice reflect me, or does it reflect the version that other people expect of me? Does this choice that I'm making, does this decision, big or small, is it something that reflects me, or is it the expectation put on me by other people? Big one. This week, ask yourself that question. Number two, I want to encourage you to perhaps journal or find a piece of paper and start documenting what things constitute the character role and what things constitute your true self. Identify moments where you acted in character. And then in another column, perhaps, or another part of it, moments that you acted from your true self, so that you have a record of it and you can compare it on paper and clearly see the difference between character role versus true self role. Character self versus true self. Role self is another way people call it, versus true self. The path from character roles or character self to true self is a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It's recognizing that it's a way that you survived, that you coped. It's understanding that there is a cost when left neglected and unaddressed. And The path, the journey, is a gradual way to reclaim the person that you were always meant to be. And maybe this goes a long way back for you, but there's a true self that's been trying to bust out. And those emotions, those things that you sometimes regret, those overreactions, they're actual signals that are telling you that there's a true self that isn't happy with the way things are and that wants to find itself. It's a signal that you need to reclaim who you are and who you always were meant to be. And again, we want to say that healing is possible. If you look at where we were before, both Gail and myself, we are in a very different place now. We've been through a lot of trauma. We've made a lot of mistakes. We've acted in ways that we regret. We've had to make things right. We've had to have conversations with our children, but healing is possible, right?
Right. It's made a world of difference just doing self-reflection
Yeah.
and having conversations with my daughters about not excusing my actions, because there is an explanation for it, but I have been given the opportunity at times to apologize for things that I feel I did wrong as a parent for whatever reason,
Yes.
because I wasn't self-regulated. And it has made a world of difference in our relationships.
Yeah. And so sometimes it takes a crossroads in life to wake up to this, and certainly being the case for me as well. I have had to step away from ministry, but I believe that in these years that I've been away from it, I've been starting to identify the things that bring me joy and try to build that personhood, that self, that true self outside of ministry, because I needed to find that person. And I think God has allowed me the time to do that, to find that true self that was always waiting to be discovered.
Right.
And I still like potatoes. They are still my favorite food, but I've discovered amazingly that I like Chinese food as well.
Yeah.
And I like Thai food and Chipotle. Who would have known that Chipotle is also my favorite food? So that brings us to the end of our episode today. We do want to ask if you can support us by subscribing to our channel. We would greatly appreciate that. Sharing it if you feel this episode or any episode will bring some help to somebody else or some resource. Feel free to comment, give us your feedback. Thank you for listening to the I'm at a Mindset. Remember, your value isn't what you have to earn, what someone else tells you that it is. It's something intrinsic that is to be embraced. Keep showing up for yourself. Be courageous. And remember that you do matter. We will catch you next time. Thank you for watching. Bye from me.
Bye for now.